Good morning to all. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon, technically, by 2 minutes. I'll introduce our guest in a moment. The topic for today, as you know, is the MTA. And as you know, the MTA is in the midst of a fundamental restructuring of what they do and how they do it to serve the people of the MTA better. Many of these issues that we've been talking about are all part of that overall function, the reorganization of the MTA, the CPRB involvement, the capital plan that was done, the homeless task force, worker safety reforms, all are about a fundamental restructuring of the MTA. One of the most basic functions for the MTA that can make the most dramatic difference for riders and users of the system is the actual speed of the trains, right? That's when you get down to the basic function of the MTA, it's moving people from one place to another, and the speed of the train is probably the most determinative factor in that process. And the speed of the trains is then connected to the safe operation of the trains. And we put together an effort, the Speed and Safety Task Force, to look at just that issue. While many of the issues the MTA is working on and we're working on together tend to be process issues or governmental approval issues or budget issues, this issue really affects riders and their commute time. And if we can improve this, people will feel it immediately and dramatically. So it's a very important function and something that we're very excited about. The Speed and Safety Task Force is headed by Jane Garvey, who's seated to my left. Jane is one of the preeminent transportation professionals in this nation. She served as head of the FAA under 2 federal administrations. Happened to be of different parties also, so you have that rare bipartisanship about you.
And live to tell about it.
Live to tell about it. We have Earl Phillips, who's the Secretary-Treasurer of the TWU, and it's a pleasure to be with him. And we're going to hear first from Ronnie Hakem, who's the Managing Director of the MTA, and she's going to give you the update that I just received from the Speed and Safety Task Force. Ronnie Hakem.
Thank you, Governor. Several months ago, Governor Cuomo posed a series of straightforward questions to the MTA. Were the trains moving slower than they did years ago? If so, why? He also wanted to find out how our speeds compared to speeds of other major systems elsewhere around the world and whether we might be able to safely raise them. Sometimes, seemingly simple questions, Governor, can prove tricky to answer. To study the proper speed and safety operating protocols, as the Governor mentioned, we established the MTA Train Speed and Safety Task Force at the end of July. The task force is chaired by Jane Garvey, former FAA administrator, and the members include myself as well as Robert Laube, the former chief safety officer of the Federal Railroad Administration, Tony Utano, president of TWU Local 100, who's represented here this morning by Earl Phillips, Dominic Servideo, executive chairman of STV, who's also present, Andy Byford, president of the New York City Transit Authority, represented today by Sally Librera, who's here with us, Pat Warren, the MTA's chief safety officer, here too, and Tom Quigley, our general counsel at the MTA. So far, our preliminary findings have shown the answer to the governor's key questions can in fact be yes. Yes, the trains do in fact move at slower speeds than they did 20 years ago. Yes, there are other systems around the world that move trains at higher speeds than ours. And yes, it is possible to safely increase the speeds to higher limits in certain sections of track. Some of the details on how we got here are both historical and anecdotal, but our findings date back to a pair of tragic accidents in the 1990s that gradually led to speed reductions across the system. In 1991, there was the serious Union Square derailment, and then in 1995, another tragic accident on the Williamsburg Bridge. There were then speed reductions that were intended as precautionary in nature, and it also accompanied the NTSB reviews of both of those crashes. The NTSB concluded that while both tragedies were mainly caused by operator errors, there were other issues pertaining to the subway system itself and its signals that were also identified. Devices were even installed to limit train acceleration. I'm told that by our estimates of the time is that trains were slowed down by as much as 6% due to these factors. The slowdowns were then compounded by actual train operator behavior, often due to no fault of their own. To many train operators, there was a perception, and there is truth to this, that parts of the signal systems were not properly calibrated to the actual posted speeds. Operators believed that if they traveled at those posted speeds, they would activate the train's emergency brakes exceeding maximum speed limits, and they would be disciplined as a result. So you can imagine what resulted. Operators began driving slower than even those allowable posted speeds. We also found that the current posting of speed limits and signage in the system is irregular or actually just deficient. If train operators are to have confidence in operating at safe, higher allowable speeds, things like the signs and their instructions need to be absolutely correct. It's also important to understand that modern trains are better designed than some of our older fleets, and this allows us to make some of these changes with great confidence. Now, as part of the $800 million Subway Action Plan, we've already begun making several improvements in the subway system. You've heard about the installation of continuous welded rail, the installation of connectors that mitigate the impact of electric voltage variations that cause signals to fail. We've performed over 1,300 priority maintenance and repair tasks to improve the reliability of our signal and switch systems. We've rebuilt signal assets. We've cleaned 2,900 miles of underground track. We've also added specialized multidisciplinary teams to improve our incident response and recovery times. As a result of these improvements, and by being able to work collaboratively with the TWU to increase operator confidence, the task force has found that we think that train operations can be safely increased beyond the levels at which they operated 2 decades ago, to as much as 50% in certain sections of the track. Our preliminary work surveyed a stretch of the 7th Avenue line, as well as the Flushing line, and have determined 4 core areas of focus moving forward. The task force has already begun with conducting further engineering work to study questions pertaining to track configuration and car movement across the system. The job now is to determine optimal running speeds in different configurations. Going forward, the task force will be focused on reducing running times through straight tracks and interlockings, improving running times around curves. Depending on the radius of the curve in question, speeds can be increased anywhere up to 5 miles per hour, alleviating bottlenecks and fine-tuning train scheduling to optimize movements, and updating that important speed signage to increase operator confidence within posted limits. As we said, we believe that by correcting some of these current issues, train speeds can ultimately be increased by as much as 50% in certain locations. It's essential that we continue to work with our union officials in this testing. The goal is to provide the certainty and predictability that train operators need for optimum train operation. We'll only be doing this by making sure signals are properly calibrated, the limits are properly posted. Our final recommendations through the task force report will be sent to MTA Chairman and CEO Pat Foy by the end of the year for his review and approval. It's important to note that our work builds on the work that New York City Transit's Safe Seconds initiative has already been making progress to reduce running times and increase subway speeds by locating and fixing those miscalibrated signals in parts of the system. But we can't stop there. because we need to ensure that we are doing it across the entire system to bring the greatest efficiency to our riders. Our work continues, and we remain steadfastly committed to improving service and increasing the reliability of the subway system for all our customers. And with that, Governor, I'll turn it over to Earl Phillips, Secretary-Treasurer of TWU Local 100.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Ronnie and Governor. Thanks for this invitation to be here. I want to thank Governor Cuomo for making this a front and center issue, and the MTA for inviting us to participate in the Train Speed Safety Task Force. It gives us an opportunity to bring our members' perspective to this problem, something that is critical to the success of any study like this, but so often have been overlooked. Our train operators want to get riders to their destinations as quickly as possible while maintaining safety. It's frustrating for passengers to endure delays, and it's just as frustrating for the workers. Train operators for years have not trusted the signal systems. They are taught to go slower than posted speeds to avoid possible tripping a signal, which in many cases can cause a service delay up to 20 minutes. And of course, to avoid disciplinary actions for tripping the signal, an action completely out of our control. As you are hearing here today, many of these issues with the signal systems are being addressed, and the initial findings are incredibly promising. Most importantly, when these recommendations are complete, I have no doubt that our confidence in the system will be restored. That will result in a fair system for our operators and a better experience for our riders, meaning they get to their destinations as quickly as possible and safely. We are looking forward to continue to work together so our riders and our members can get the improved system they deserve. Thank you. And at this point in time, I'll turn it over to Jane Garvey from the FAA system. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Earl, and thank you, Governor and Ronnie. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I want to say it's been exciting for me as a former federal regulator to be part of an effort that I see as so critical and so very, very important. You know, when the governor called for the creation of this task force, he insisted that the effort focus on safety, but he encouraged us to look at it through an engineering lens. And the MTA Train Speed and Safety Task Force did exactly that. We reviewed the posted civil speed restrictions, improperly calibrated signal timers, and we looked at the overall operations to ensure that trains don't continue to operate slower than safety and best practices dictate. The initial findings in this report, as both Earl and Ronnie have said, have been extremely positive. And while we know there's additional testing to be done, the bottom line is these are achievable. And again, that was another important point that the governor made to us. Give us some recommendations that can be implemented and that will really make a difference to the system. And I think we've done that. I want to reiterate that the goal of this study has been and will always be to continue to increase reliability in the system, to reduce the running times, but all the while ensuring that the nearly 6 million people who ride on the subways will reach their destination safely. Nothing's more important than that. In the next phase, as Ronnie has indicated, we will continue this work and will ultimately validate the charge that we've had. The governor understands that first and foremost, the safety and the security of New Yorkers is our #1 priority. It is for all of us. We're extremely confident that the recommendations the task force is making today are an important step, a huge step, towards an approach that will keep New Yorkers safe, but yet dramatically increasing efficiency in the system. So I want to thank the governor. I want to thank the MTA and the terrific staff that has been deeply involved, and our union partners who have been wonderful to work with and have come forward with some great recommendations and ones that I know that we are taking very seriously. And we all look forward to continuing in this very important work. Thank you, Governor.
I want to thank all of you for making really great progress. More to do, but the progress has been quick and dramatic. Just to provide a little context for this situation, the MTA is in the midst of trying to make transformative change, which is much easier said than done, especially for a large bureaucracy. The MTA hit a crisis point a couple of years ago, and that's when we implemented the Subway Action Plan that came in and basically said all the old rules are gone. We're going to make change. We're going to make change quickly. And we're going to do what we need to do to make those changes happen and break the bureaucratic box. The Subway Action Plan worked. These initiatives are in that same mode. To me, this is the operational analog to the L train tunnel, right? The L train tunnel, the plan was we're going to close it down for 2 years, we're going to rebuild the whole thing, and we'll figure out what to do with the 300,000 people who use the train. Yeah, but then if you spend time, which we did, questioning all the premises, what's your job as governor? I ask why 5,000 times. Just keep drilling down, drilling down, drilling down. Why would you close the tunnel for 2 years? Why would you build it back using 100-year-old technology? Why isn't there a better way? If we're afraid of creating silica dust, which was the big thing with the L train tunnel, why would you go break all the cement that you don't have to break in the first place, creating silica dust? So we actually came out with a much better resolution, but it was a painful process to change all those bureaucratic norms. This is analogous to me because it's the same type of analysis. When you hear what Ronnie went through, there were basically 3 factors. 90s, you have accidents. NTSB comes in to investigate, as they're supposed to. What's the normal reaction? Well, we should slow down the trains. Let's figure out what's going on. Second fact, the operators say the signal system is miscalibrated. What does that mean? That means the operators believe if they go the actual posted speed limit, the signals could actually be triggered even though they're going at the speed limit that's posted. This goes on for years, by the way, where the union operators say the signals are wrong. If we drive at that speed limit, we're going to get a ticket, disciplined. So what did they do? They drove slower than the posted speed limit, which is just normal protective behavior. I talked to some operators who said they drove about half the posted speed limit. It was posted for 20, they drove at 10. Why? Because they didn't know where the signals were actually calibrated. The analogy used with me, it's like driving around New York City and you have speed cameras that say you're going to get a ticket if you go over 30, but the camera calibration is wrong. So you may get a ticket for going 28 or 27 or 22. You don't really know. So what do? You drive a lot slower to protect yourself. That was a major factor. It still is a major factor. They're not driving at what the posted speed limit is, not to mention that what the posted speed limit is may not even be correct in the first place. Then you have another factor, which is, well, these trains are now different and better than the old trains. And the track is better. We just went through the Subway Action Plan. We now have continuously welded rails. There are no water puddles on the tracks. It's a better system than it was. So what is the right speed limit? Question 1. From an engineering point of view, from other systems point of view, across the world, what's the right speed limit? And then let's back up, set new speed limits all across the system, calibrate the signals to that actual speed limit, bring our union partners as part of the process so that they can say to the operators afterwards, drive the posted speed limit. We checked, the signals are calibrated, you will not get a ticket, drive the speed limit, and do that system-wide. That's the right way to do this. It is a really exhaustive effort because you have to go back, get every division involved. You have to do basic engineering work, and then you have to do basic testing work because safety is a priority. So take a train, run it at that speed through the entire system, and make sure everybody says it's safe, and make sure the union representatives say it is safe, and we get that the system's now properly calibrated. We will drive the speed limit. So it's like the L train in tunnel in that it is just a fundamental rethinking of the way you do business, which is very hard for a bureaucracy to do. By the way, change is very hard on a personal level, right? You would be better if you did X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I know. It's just hard to make change. You do a bureaucracy magnifies that 70,000 times, right? But you want to talk about an impactful change? This is an impactful change. You drive the train faster, you will get where you are going faster. And that's what do riders want. Get me where I'm going, get me there on a predictable timeline, get me there faster, keep me safe, let me be in a basic clean environment, and this can make a real change.